Nico spent the early 60s working as a model and appearing in a number of films and television commercials in Europe. She appeared in one of Fellini's most classic films, and she was the main character in a French film called Sweet Skin. Her face not only graced the cover of many fashion magazines, but she was also on the cover of albums such as Bill Evans' Moonbeams and Devil is a Woman Gone by Casey Anderson. In 1965, the British invasion was in full force, with bands like the Beatles and the Stones reaching the top of the charts all over the world. London seemed like the place to be, and Nico turned up in England. She originally came to England at the invitation of photographer David Bailey, who wanted her to model for him. She moved to a room in Earl's Court. While in London, Nico met the Beatles at parties, but she preferred the Stones. Nico said,
"The Beatles were show business and the Stones were more my idea of rebels. The Beatles could give me a nice time, but I wanted a bad time. I was foolish that way."
One night in early March 1965, Nico met the Rolling Stones. It was a recording company party to celebrate a successful tour of Australia and the release of their second LP, whose cover was shot by her friend David Bailey. Nico had heard that Stones manager Andrew Oldham was looking for girls to turn into stars, and she was determined to meet him. She had met many old-style music executives, and she assumed Andrew Oldham was just another middle-aged man with a cigar. She was surprised when she found out the Stones manager was a young mod who wore his sunglasses indoors and was 4 years younger than her. It didn't take long for Nico to get noticed by the Stones. Oldham noticed Brian Jones was staring ardently at her, and the Stones manager approached her and said, "Let's meet up and talk careers." "How about tomorrow?" said Nico. Oldham responded, "We're starting a tour, come and catch us somewhere and we can talk after the show." The show she caught was at the Olympia in Paris, on the 17th of April 1965. One of Nico's friends in Paris was singer-actress Sue Zhu. Nico was surprised to learn that Sue Zhu had spent some time with Brian Jones, and she was in a position to take Nico backstage past the Olympia's security staff into the backstage rooms. The meeting in Paris was the beginning of the on and off period of 3 months that Nico spent with Brian Jones. Nico recalled,
"It was fascinating and frightening. Jim Morrison had the best sex I ever had inside me, but Brian gave the best sex. He was like my little brother, and I had to stop him sometimes from destroying everything, including himself. He was sexy, he seduced girls, and he was charming, until he locked the door."
Nico craved for their relationship to be one of genuine correspondence. She tried to discuss poetry with Jones, and then music, but, according to Nico,
"He was too stoned to talk about anything, and often so was I. He was gifted and could have done some original music, but he was too lazy."
Nico added,
"Brian was keen on the occult. We were interested in these things and he was very deep about it, but he was like a little boy with a magic set. It was really an excuse for him to be nasty and sexy. He read books by an old Englishman called Aleister Crowley, and I told Brian that I knew the devil and the devil was German."
While in Paris, Nico also met Andy Warhol and his entourage for the first time. In his memoir, photographer Willie Maywald, who was one of Nico's closest friends in Paris, wrote, "Nico had the gift of ferreting out interesting people. One evening in 1965 we were together in a nightclub called Castel when she made herself known to a group of Americans. One of them was Andy Warhol. He was there with Edie Sedgwick, his assistant Gerald Malanga, Eddie's friend and organizer Chuck Vine, and Nico's regular friendly American in Paris, Dennis Deegan. Nico made herself known to Andy and company by name-dropping Fellini, Dylan, and the Stones, even though she still hadn't had that conversation Andrew Oldham promised her. Nico's conversation with Andrew Oldham finally came in May 1965. According to Nico, Oldham offered her a recording deal in a Los Angeles hotel where the Stones were staying for a few days that month to record their next single, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Nico said,
"Andrew took me to a toilet, where we both snorted a line of speed, and he told me it was time to do a deal."
Oldham told her he was planning to start a record label called Immediate Records along with Tony Calder. He told her to think of a summer-style song because they were planning to release her first single in August. Nico flew back to London, where she met Gerald Malanga again at a party. It was there that Gerald Malanga gave Nico the factory's telephone number and told her to drop by if she came to New York. However, Nico had only one thing in her mind: she had to find a song for her debut single. In 1964, she had met Bob Dylan and spent some time with him. Nico had asked him to write a song for her and Dylan wrote "I'll Keep It With Mine." Nico thought it was the perfect tune for her debut single and she recorded a demo of the song. She played Oldham the demo, but he told her it was a great song but too downbeat for a debut. He said, "It will make a good follow-up." Brian Jones told her not to worry as Oldham knew the trade inside out and he promised to help her coach her and play guitar on the recording session. The song that was chosen was a Gordon Lightfoot composition called "I'm Not Saying." Jimmy Page, who at the time was still working as a session musician, was recruited as Immediate Records' house producer and arranger, and he wrote the B-side, "The Last Mile," along with Oldham. Both Jimmy Page and Brian Jones played guitar on the single. On the evening of the 20th of August, the immediate launch party was held at Wolf Mankiewicz's upmarket Pickwick Club tucked away off Charing Cross Road in Soho. Wolf was the father of new Rolling Stones photographer Gerd Mankiewicz. Nico sat between Tony Calder and Andrew Oldham. The Rolling Stones' Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page attended the party with new US act The Byrds, who were touring Britain that month. Kit Lambert and Chris Stamp, who were managing The Who, kept offices in the same apartment block as Immediate Records and they were all ears on how to retaliate against the music business and make their own millions. Their fresh-faced charge Pete Townsend partied for 5 minutes but was a little in awe of Keith Richards and had taken too much speed to enjoy the lush surrounds. Promotion for Nico's debut single then started. She appeared on one of Britain's most popular television programs, Ready Steady Go. Paul Jones, who at the time was Manfred Mann's lead singer, remembered Nico's appearance on the show. He said, "In the studio there was this small separated area made of sound screens. If you were next on, they put you in there while you waited to be called. There was myself, Nico and Marianne Faithfull. Lulu was on and she was giving it everything, as Lulu did." Nico and Marianne were deep in conversation as she came off. The floor manager came in and said, "Nico, can we have you now please?" As she started to leave, Marianne said something like "Good luck darling," and Lulu, still kind of flushed from her performance said, "Good luck, you'll need it." What she meant by that was, "It's hot out there, take it easy," but Nico misunderstood and shot her a look of sheer thunder. Poor Lulu was mortified because she hadn't meant anything insulting at all. The press ran articles about Nico. In this feature from 1965, Nico commented,
"The biggest influence on my career has really been Bob Dylan, and with Nina Simone, he's definitely my favorite singer. Otherwise, I like Handel, jazz and Greek music, and, of course, I dig the Stones."
Derek Johnson reviewed the single for New Musical Express. He wrote, "Folksy and commercial with a bounding driving beat. It highlights the most attractive voice of girl singer Nico. Flip is more of a protest song titled The Last Mile." The single was a flop. In the second half of 1965, Nico skipped from country to country looking for work. According to Richard Witt's book, Nico: The Life and Lies of an Icon, she had undergone an abortion in London, having discovered she was pregnant by Brian Jones. In early November, Nico flew to New York, where she found the Rolling Stones' Bob Dylan and his manager Albert Grossman. Brian Jones took Nico to Warhol's factory, which she was disappointed to discover was nothing more than the 4th floor of a warehouse on East 47th Street. Nico greeted Warhol with a copy of her immediate record. This was a wise move, for that disc proved to be her audition for the Velvet Underground and her ticket to fame as Andy Warhol's new superstar. The Velvet Underground and Nico recorded their debut album, which became one of the most influential albums of all time, and as they say, the rest is history. But now, let's move forward to June 1967. At that point, Nico's relationship with the Velvet Underground was at an all-time low. The Velvets wouldn't let Nico perform with them on stage. John Cale said, "We'd been playing without her for a few months anyway." Nico's relationship with the Velvet Underground had always been problematic since they always felt Nico was forced into the band by Warhol and they didn't consider her a real member of the group. Nico then flew west to the sunnier coast and into the jaded arms of Brian Jones. Together they attended the Monterey Pop Festival, one of the first big rock festivals. Brian Jones was a sort of master of ceremonies and introduced Jimi Hendrix's legendary performance at the festival. Brian and Nico were staying with Andrew Oldham's wife Sheila. Oldham was no longer the Stones' manager at that point, but he was one of the people who helped organize the festival. Brian had brought along with him a trunk full of clothes. Nico said, "It was as though he had brought Bieber up and put it in a valise." A 16-year-old girl called Debbie Simon wrote an article for an American magazine about meeting Brian at the festival. She wrote,
I saw Brian first as he inspected some hippie jewelry. He was buying things left and right. A blonde with him named Nico kept kidding him about it. Really blonde, really pretty. I hated her. Very earthy like all Rolling Stones fans. Not teeny bop giddy the way Monkees fans are. They were having a ball. It was all so wild, so confusing. So I saw this stand with coffee and donuts. I walked up to Brian and just as if he had sent me for them, I handed him a cup of coffee and a donut. He was absorbed in more jewelry. Maybe he thought Nico handed them to him. I was standing close enough to kiss him. I wish I had. He might have thought that was Nico too. Pretty blonde, I hated her. But he sipped the coffee. He munched the donut. Nico was fingering through the jewelry too and didn't even notice. As he sipped, I sipped. As he munched, I munched. I was close enough to love him. I loved him. You can't deny it. I had breakfast with Brian.
That was the last time Nico and Brian were seen together in public. Not much is known about whether they ever met again before Brian's death 2 years later in June 1969.